Hello there, this is Zach with SuiteCG. Have a uh, tutorial overview of the new data automation features within SuiteCG. This will not be an all-encompassing tutorial, but we'll touch base on all the major points, and we'll have more detailed tutorials in the future. So this tutorial will focus on football. Other sports operate in pretty much the same way, but there are some things with football that because it's a more complicated sport in all of the different pieces with down and distance and the ball spot and things like that, that it's worth it to make this the focus of it. And then things like soccer and basketball are actually quite a bit easier um, because they don't have all of the special features on the score bug. So I've got a football graphics package loaded, and I'm going to come up here to the data sources tab. Now, this used to be listed just as clock cameras, and we still have the clock cameras, and we'll be working on refining that feature in the future. But now we have two additional tabs here, third-party data sources and then data assignments. So I'm going to come over here to third-party data sources. I'm going to add a new data source. So the sources we currently support, and this will be growing as time goes on. We can provide from the local hard drive, can map to a simple XML file, a CSV file, JSON, or text file. And then I'm going to scroll down past these others for a moment. We can also take XML, CSV, and JSON from a HTTP source, and we can ping that on a predetermined interval. So we're actually going to be looking at the XML web here in just a minute. But before we do that, we do support the Daktronics TV feed from all sports CGs, all sport pros, and from a computer connected on a DAC network outputting DSTI data on that serial port. So we can support all of those. We can also support Scorebird. I'm going to select that just for the moment. This implementation is the simplest. It's not the fastest. So this pings their API endpoint at desired interval, and you just need to provide your nest ID, and then that data will come in. When you connect, the data will appear down here. We are working on adding the more tighter integration directly with the Nest device as it's running on the same network that SuiteCG is. So you'll get faster and more responsive data from that. And I can't say enough good things about the staff at Scorebird. They've been very helpful and resourceful as we've gone through this process with them, and we're looking forward to working with them more closely and getting that direct integration with the nested devices. So I'm going to remove this source for now, add new data source, and I'm going to select XML web. So now over on another computer, I have OBS Studio running some old footage of a football scoreboard. I'm going to play that, and then I have scoreboard OCR running. And I have that set up to output an HTTP service XML file. So I'm going to grab that URL and come back over to SuiteCG. I'm going to paste that URL into here and connect. And now you can see that data is appearing here. Nothing's changing at the moment because I think at this point in the game, they were in a timeout or something. So the clock isn't running at the moment, but OCR is doing its thing. So you'll notice as I added this source, the XML web source appeared up here. And now I can, if I disconnect, I could put scoreboard OCR there. And you can see up here that name then changes and I can connect. and that turns green. So we have an active connection. Now, let's say something were to happen and we lost the connection somehow, and we're off doing our own thing in the middle of the game, and it disconnects. Um, well, what we can do from this button here is click it, and then we can connect, and it will attempt to reconnect right away. And if that fails, then we can click and go hop right to the source of the data type that is failing for us, and hopefully get some idea of what's going on. Maybe the data is not coming through at all. Maybe the device is down. Maybe you're not connected to the internet. There's different things, but this is where you can get to direct to the exact source that's giving you problems to help start the troubleshooting process. Multiple sources can be added, and every source that's listed here will appear up here. In this scenario where, let's say, you lost internet completely, got it restored, you could do a reconnect all, and it will attempt to reconnect all of the sources that are in your list. As you go through all of this, we can import or we can export configurations and then import them later. And we do have some very basic XML and JSON file options, so you can just kind of play around with that, manually edit a text file or an XML or JSON, things like that. We also have profiles built in and provided for almost all of the Daktronics TV feed sources. We still have a little bit of work to do on some of the source types, but those will be coming soon. Okay, I'm going to come over to data assignments. And so what we have here is the list of all the different types of data points in the SuiteCG Data Manager. So I'm going to start with the clock. I'm going to expand that, and now I want to select the source, and scoreboard OCR is our only source. And then I want to click to assign, and I want to select the data point that we're going to use for it. So I'm going to select data or game clock, and now we can see the minute 38 coming in. I do not have a play clock coming in off the OCR feed, so I will skip that for now. And then I want to talk about the interstitial clock. So the interstitial clock is specifically for things like halftime. It exists as a discrete clock within SuiteCG specifically for the purposes of like in hockey when you have penalty clocks, and those synchronize with the game clock. Well, within the manual controls, you want to have a countdown during the intermission without affecting the penalty clocks. So we came up with the interstitial clock that we can run during intermissions and timeouts and things like that. That feature has rolled over into other sports, specifically for like half times or volleyball intermission breaks and things like that. So if you want to run a halftime clock, then you want to select the interstitial clock. And for our purposes, it is the exact same thing as the game clock. It's odd to think about, but there's a reason in the code for that to be the way it is. The penalties, there are no clocks associated with that, but the way we designed the penalty clocks for hockey, there's a clock associated with it. And then the way we implemented the penalty flags in football, they kind of use the same workflow, but there's no clock involved. So you can ignore mapping any sort of clock to this. It will accomplish nothing. I'm going to minimize the clocks. Now I'm going to come over to the specialty counters. Now, in this scoreboard, I'm going to come back over to OCR here. This scoreboard actually had some issues with the timeouts 7-segment displays, particularly this one, the bottom display, this bottom segment is out. And this one was a little dim. So I'm going to skip doing timeouts on this because we're not going to be able to get valid data from either of these regardless. However, we can do down distance and ball spot. So come back over to SuiteCG. I'm going to just select OCR for all of those. Kick attempt, you do not need to worry about because there's no discrete kick attempt or distance on scoreboards. So going to select down, distance, and ball spot. Okay, now if you can see now that now we're at 4th and 13 on the 45, and that is what we have on coming from scoreboard OCR. Period counter. We want to select the period. And now for creating a new session, you do need to add these conditions. Then you save it, and then you can just import it in the future. So if we get a value of 1, we want that to be the first period, 2 is the second, then we got the third, whoops, the fourth, OT, 2 OT, and 3 OT. So what will happen now as scores are made, we should see it now. We should see it. Oh, we haven't mapped the scores yet. So come over to the line status counter. I'm going to map those two. So we got the visit score and the home score. Okay. So now you can see at this point, this is a kind of a bad example since we're already in the 4th period. It's assuming that the score of 28 and 35, that all of those occurred in the 4th period. Now, in reality, you'd be running this from the start of the game. So if there is a touchdown in the 1st period, then it's going to do the math based on previous periods and calculate what the score should be in the 4th. And then let's say there's a 14 there and nothing in the 3rd, and then 14 there. Now let's say there was a touchdown and a PAT there. And then let's say there were 2 touchdowns, but they failed on the extra points. So now we have something like this. So it will do this provided you have the period data mapped and the score mapped. Now, as you go to, if we come over to the scoreboard, we can look at the line score and see that we're in the 4th period because that's highlighted, but we can see what the score was throughout. And then points this quarter, then we can also see that as well. So in addition to just bringing in the raw data, we are mapping it to the proper period as things progress. Manual stats, not much to do with this as far as scoreboard data is concerned, but we do want to be able to connect to different data sources that are doing stat tracking. Or if you had a Google spreadsheet, we eventually hope to map into your Google spreadsheet, and then you can define the different data points, different cells to take data from, and it would grab that periodically. Now, for the toggles, the main thing we want to talk about here is with the ball possession. And once we're done with this, well, I'm going to go through some of the caveats that come along with data automation. Because one of the risks with data automation is now you're reliant on someone not sitting next to you, perhaps, someone in a completely different room, or not easily accessible to you, to be entering all of the data for you, and you're counting on them to not make mistakes. So it does add a whole new set of potential problems that you would not be accustomed to doing manual control. So for ball possession, we have 2 different values. We have the visiting possession indicator and then the home indicator. Now, we used to have it as the ball possession was just one toggle, and it was either true or false, and visit team was false, home team was true, or vice versa. However, when we get the data for most of the scoreboard controllers, what we were finding is it was two discrete values. So we had to modify the football setup, and it did help with some things, but it did cause some uh, some situations as well. So if I come over to, well, I'm gonna map first. So I got the visit possession and home possession, and then we need to tell it what constitutes a true condition. Now, if I come back over to scoreboard OCR, I'm gonna reset the clock here because it looks like we were running out. Um, we have two different fields here for the ball possession. So this one is the home possession, this one's the visit possession. Now OCR has this feature set up to add a symbol, so this indicates whatever implementation they use to determine if it's off or on. They will output if it meets the condition to be true, they'll output a 1, or they'll output a 0 if it does not meet the condition to be true. So it's sending either a 0 or a 1. So with that in mind, we'll come back over to SuiteCG, and um, if both of the what we want to do is what's going to make it true in SuiteCG? It would be 1. And as you can see, as I did that, it immediately properly set the ball possession now to the visiting team. But I also want to put 1 here because if there will be conditions where uh, right now the actual value of the home possession is 0, so it's meeting a condition that makes it false, or rather it's not meeting the condition that makes it true, whereas the visiting possession is. As soon as the ball possession changes, that data coming from OCR or your scoreboard controller will change, and now visit possession will be false and home possession will be true. And then the ball possession will change up here. Now, we do get situations, particularly with what we learned when doing things with the Daktronics TV feeds, is after a touchdown, the data feed enters a mode where no one has ball possession. So um, what we had to do is then we get a situation where I'm gonna fake it into this. We'll never have a condition or two. So right now, no one has ball possession. So um, what we've done is we've created this screen here to give you some indication of what's going on in the data feed. And if you've watched the other video related to this new release, you'll see that during a kickoff, um, after a PAT 2 or a missed opportunity for that, or after like a field goal, when there's a kickoff, we enter this kind of kickoff mode. And one of the reasons we did that was specifically because we were we were retaining the old down and distance information, and the play clock was still going, and we would trigger the down and distance with the play clock. So during the kickoff, we would actually get a down and distance to show when we didn't want it to. So now we can enter this kickoff mode because, and then the ball possession information was all screwed up. So this gives us an opportunity to hide some of that information so that you're not showing inaccurate data on your score bug. So with that said, I'm going to go back to that. And then that's all we need to do with these match details and team details. If you're getting data off of a simple XML file that has all this data, you can do that, but you're not going to get any of this data off of a scoreboard controller like a Daktronics or a Fairplay or something like that. This would all be customer managed data off of a spreadsheet or something. Again, once we offer the ability to connect to spreadsheets and things like that. Okay, so I want to talk about some of the things that we're not supporting just quite yet. We do not yet have the ability to trigger macro functions. So while we can adjust the score when there's a touchdown, um, we cannot, let's see what happened there. We're getting both teams have ball position at the moment. I think the OCR, the camera shook a little bit, and now the OCR looks like it's triggering the ball possession. Okay, well we won't worry about that right now. Lost my train of thought. Macros. So while we can, you know what I'm going to do here? I'm going to just disconnect here, and then I'm going to give the home team ball possession so we can see these buttons. So while we can adjust the score when it increases by 6 points, what we don't have the ability yet is to run the animation for that touchdown. So we know how to address that problem, but we just haven't had a chance to implement it yet. So that is something that we intend to address in the future. But at the moment, we are not able to do that. So that goes for like timeouts as well. So if you're just fine having the timeout indicators and no special animations for timeouts, that's fine. You don't need to do that. But if you want to trigger the animation for a team timeout, then you're going to have to do that manually. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then obviously with penalties, that's not something that is there's no data point for that for us to use that. So penalty flags are going to have to be entirely manual. So, and that comes down to what I was getting at a little bit earlier. When one of the risks of going with data automation is you are kind of putting your lives in someone else's hands, and you don't have the ability, you may or may not have the ability to talk to them about it. So the scoreboard controller is doing his own thing. He's probably in another room, or he's down by courtside, and you're up in the bleachers. And if they're not fast to update things, or they're getting it wrong, you're inheriting their wrong data, and there's nothing you can do about it other than moving it to a manual mode. So like in this case, when I was getting that weird data off the ball possessions, I disconnected. What I could then do, if the data source is not giving me reliable information, then I could just come back here and say no source, because ball possession just isn't doing its thing the way I need it to, and then I can reconnect. And the rest of the automation will continue except for the ball possession. And then if you get a feeling that they've fixed the problem, or they've got someone new on the job, then you can go back and remap it. The other thing to think about, particularly with the down and distance, and I covered this in our other video, you can trigger the down and distance to display based on either the internal play clock, which you're manually controlling, or the external play clock. Now, if in either of these situations, I'm going to go with, let's just say I'm doing it with the external clock. And again, this is the play clock, not the game clock. What we found, so if you right click the play clock for settings, you can reveal the down and distance when the play clock gets under a certain value. So there's some gives and takes in this feature that you should be aware of. For one, we actually found in our own testing, and other beta testers may have found differently, we usually revealed it at about 15 seconds, or under 15 seconds. And the reason for that was the board operator was sometimes slow to get the down and distance updated on the scoreboard. So what would happen is, if we were at 24 and um, it plays, now it displays first and 10, and then in the middle of that, then it suddenly changes to, second and 7 or something, while the play clock is in being displayed. And we didn't want to do that. Now it didn't work here because the down and distance were coming in from automated data. So I could try to update it and it would automatically switch it back because the automated data is overriding my manual adjustments. Um, so what we found is we gave it, we set the reveal time at something more like 15 seconds. And that usually gave the board operator time to enter get all the data in and entered into the scoreboard, so that we weren't showing changing down in distance while it was displaying. The risk on that, however, is if the team is in a they're playing fast, you may go through a couple plays where you don't even get to see the down and distance because they snapped the ball before it got under 15 seconds. So the risk is you lose not showing it if play is moving fast, but the higher you set it, the more risk you have of the data not being updated because of the speed of entry by the scoreboard operator. So those are some of the things to keep in mind on that. The other thing, just to be aware of, which I also covered in our other video on this new release, the ball spot information. I'm not going to go into all the details of why, but our manual ball spot tool here allows us to display the ball spot with either the team information or team name or mascot. Um, and we were able to do that because we're basing it off of 100 yards on the field. Well, from scoreboards, we only get a value of 0 to 50. So, and we banged our head against the wall to try to figure this out, and we just couldn't figure out a way to make it happen reliably. There are too many uncertainties and unknowns where um, the ball spot, we don't know what side of the field it's on when it's between 0 and 50. We could kind of like guess that and then make some assumptions based on down and distance. And after a kickoff, we can assume the ball is on a certain side of the field. But there were just enough uncertainties of, well, if a play happened like this and the ball spot ended up being the same, or there was a penalty and it's second and something, our attempts to track it by down and distance would fail. So unfortunately we've just had to give up on that until maybe in the future, but we'll see. But for now, if you're doing automated data for the ball spot, pretty much your only option is to just do it on the number and not include the team or mascot in that information, because you will not be able to guarantee that it's showing the right side of the field. Along with that, the red zone indicator can only be used if you're tracking the ball spot manually, as well as the team color, along with um, the ball spot. So, okay. I think that about covers the basics of this. I guess I will show you how to do an export. So if I want to export this configuration, you can see here we have some folders here in our external data source configurations, where you can import some pre-made stuff. And I'm just going to do just call that test. And now if I reset the configuration, let's say I've created a new game. I want to import, do test. There's all my mappings, and then I can just connect to the source, and it's good to go. So yeah, that's what we've got. We're looking forward to getting feedback on this. If there's anything that's unclear, let us know. And there's probably going to be some tweaks that we make along the way to improve the functionality of this. So Looking forward to doing all of that. And please reach out if you have any questions about any of this. Thank you for your time.